We're almost there. Almost to the draft. Promise.
Well, another week and a couple days. Can't wait, Dave.
Yeah, it's always an exciting time of year, and we have a lot more draft stuff to get to today. We want to go through the 2016, 2017 drafts, some trade down candidates, a theory from a personnel executive that Peter King got that we want to kind of toss around and see what it would mean for the Eagles. And then we're going to have some fun with a mock draft simulator and kind of go through the first two rounds and see who we can get for the Eagles the way it shakes out. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Rube, as we get closer to the draft, where's your head? Like, what do you like? Have you changed at all about like what you think the Eagles are going to do or what they need to do?
Yeah, you you change every day like five times. I still think they're going to get out of 15. I'm starting to think they're going to trade down. We'll talk about that. I just think 15 might not be the best place for them to be, and I mean, there seems to be so many unknowns this year, and just so many. Maybe that's the case every year, but the whole top 14, where the picks ahead of them, it seems to be really fluid, and you don't usually get that this long after the combine, this long after the Senior Bowl and everything. But it's there's a lot of guessing, there's a lot of speculating, and you ask two people, and you're going to get two completely different ideas of what the top 14 is going to look like. So it's really hard to focus in on what's going to be there, what their options are going to be. But I guess it's starting to get a little clearer, but I just think there's going to be better value for them a little later in the first round from 15, and add some assets on the way. So we'll see how it goes. But that's what I'm thinking they're going to get. How he's going to get. I went from thinking he's going to trade up to now thinking he's going to trade down.
I'm starting to think it's possible they do both because I kind of agree with you in one sense, but I think I think the reason this year's kind of wacky is because there's not a clear consensus number one pick, and because the quarterback position is so unclear. Normally, you kind of figure out the quarterbacks and everything else falls in line. Like last year, as weird as that year was because of COVID, we knew Trevor Lawrence was at the top of the class, and then everything kind of sets in after that. Whereas this year, it could be Aiden Hutchinson. It could be Trayvon Walker. It could still be Thibodeau for all we know. It could be one of the tackles. I mean, there's a lot of different outcomes of this, and that would it can, and that's the thing. Like if that pick, if you're doing a mock draft and you get that pick wrong and you get the wrong position there, then everything else after it kind of spirals for you. So you really have no idea what's going to happen. But I look at it, I actually think there's going to be decent value at 15, but we talked about the trade up candidates. I think there's a good chance there's a player at that 10 through 12 range that's worth the trade up. But I also think if they get to 18, there might be some good talent left, like good enough talent where they think, yeah, we can draft a guy here, or we can drop down X amount of spots and still get that same caliber player and pick up an extra pick this year or next year, whatever it is. So yeah, there's so many options right now, and Howie will leave them open until he has to absolutely make a decision.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, the whole arc of the draft depends on Trent Baalke, so that kind of makes it it's where it's starting, and who knows what he's going to do. So, I know Trayvon Walker's kind of the hot name for them right now. That's where a lot of the speculation is, but who knows what he's going to do. So who knows what Doug's thinking. It's fascinating. The fascinating thing about it is there's probably more written about the draft than anything in sports, right? I mean, it's a year-round industry, and still here we are 9 days from it, and nobody knows what's going to happen. That's what makes it great.
Yeah, it's the ultimate reality show, and it's actual reality. It's not, none of this is scripted. It's all pretty wild, and it's funny because like guys throughout the process, the players we talk about for the Eagles kind of come and go as their stocks were like not that long ago. I was talking about Trayvon Walker as a possibility for them
right.
at 16 at that point, and now he might be the first overall pick. And there, there was a time where Jermaine Johnson was definitely in the range in the teens. And now he might be a top 10 pick. There was a time where George Karlaftis was out of the range because he was a top 10 guy. And now it's like, oh, they'd be crazy to take him at 18. That's too high. So it's funny how it kind of goes through these waves, and we're all just holding on as it's things change, and things are going to change in the next 9 days.
They'll change Thursday morning. I mean, it'll change throughout the day. So it's there's really nothing like it, and you can say why it's so compelling to so many people. I know a lot of people who enjoy the draft more than they enjoy the games. So,
and it's fun. I mean, I some of the backlash is like, well, what's even the point of talking about it or dealing with it if no one knows? It's fun. It's entertainment. Mock drafts are fun. Of course, they're not right. None of them are right. Most of them are mostly wrong, but it's fun to play with. It's fun to figure it out. And the mock draft simulator has been a lot of fun. And there's a bunch of different companies that have them. I don't want to just tell you to use one or the other. I use a bunch of them because it kind of ranks them differently. So you get different options, and they're fun to play with. So we figured today we'd have some fun and throw up a mock draft simulator. I'm going to use the Draft Network just because. So we're going to be the Eagles here, and I'm going to start it up, and we're going to go through the first 2 rounds and walk away with 3 players, no trades, and see who the Eagles end up with. So right now it's picking, it's going pretty fast. So I'm going to go through the first 14 picks, and then Rube, you and I will kind of toss around the Eagles options at 15, and then we'll do it again at pick 18. So number 1, the Jaguars take Aiden Hutchinson. The Lions take Malik Willis, which I kind of like. I don't think that's crazy. Texans take Evan Neal. Jets take Ekwonu. Giants take Walker. Panthers take Cross. Giants take Hamilton. Falcons take Thibodeau at 8. That's quite a slide. Ahmad Gardner at 9 to the Seahawks. Jermaine Johnson at 10 to the Jets. 2 players that could be trade-up targets for the Eagles. 11, Garrett Wilson to Washington. 12, Derek Stingley to the Vikings, another guy. 13, Andrew Booth, the Clemson cornerback, to the Texans. 14, Jordan Davis to Georgia. It feels like he's not getting past 14 and the Ravens. But now here we are at 15. The Eagles, I'll read off some of the top ranked players just in the list here, and then we'll kind of toss around who we think would make sense. Drake London, Kenny Pickett, Jamison Williams, Trevor Penning, Devontae Wyatt, Chris Olave, Desmond Ritter, Zion Johnson, Trent McDuffie, Tyler Linderbaum, George Karlaftis, Devin Lloyd, Daxton Hill. That's as far as I'll go. Mm-hmm. First thoughts here.
First thoughts is 1 wide receiver in those first 14 picks. And if Howie wants his pick of guys, I mean, if there's a guy other than Garrett Wilson that if he feels really strongly about Chris Olave or Jamison Webb, who he's going to have his pick of guys if he wants to just sit at 15. If he thinks, that he can get good value at that position, and there's certainly other receivers than those guys who are available, who are really good, project to be really good, he could get out of 15 and get a receiver a few picks later, or even get it at 18 and get that other pick out of there. But if he stays at 15, you have your pick of Jamison Williams or Chris Olave or Drake. I mean, there's really good receivers there. So I think that's, there's been so much focus on wide receivers, and this mock has 1 in the first 14 picks, and that's Garrett Wilson, who I think is going to be really good too. So that's what I'm thinking. That's where I think, would make the most sense considering how those first 14 picks went.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you hit on it there. There's 2 ways to look at it. If the Eagles have one of those receivers rated much higher than the others, then you take them at 15. But if they they think, hey, we like Olave, we like Williams, and we like Drake London, all about the same
equally, yeah,
then why would you take one at 15?
Right.
Because then you can wait until 18 and still get one of those guys and take a different position at 15 or trade out of it or whatever. And the other thing with trades is there has to be a partner. There's always this talk about like they should. I always see like the Eagles should have traded up for CeeDee Lamb back, a few years ago. Well, you can only trade up if the other team wants to trade out. So you have to have two teams. So it's easy to talk about trading up and down, but you have to find someone willing to do it. Is it a receiver? What about the other positions or the other players here? Kenny Pickett, I think we can probably cross quarterback off. Trevor Penning, they're not taking a tackle, I wouldn't think. Devontae Wyatt, maybe.
Interesting name.
Trent McDuffie, the next cornerback. This mock had Andrew Booth going ahead of him, which I don't think is the consensus. That's the way I would do it. I have Booth ahead of McDuffie, but a lot of people really like Trent McDuffie, and you'd have to think about him at 15, right?
No doubt about it. And the Eagles have been linked to him, that they, have like him a lot. So that's certainly the other possibility. But it's, what was it? Just the two corners, right? In the first 14, just Gardner and Stingley. Oh, and Booth.
And Booth at 13. Booth.
Yeah. So, that would be four corners in a span of how many picks? 7 picks.
Yeah, not many. That's kind of like our on the clock mock draft.
Yeah.
When we had that run of corners.
Exactly. But the difference is now you're looking at the fourth or fifth best corner, where with receivers you're looking at your second guy. Yeah. So it all depends on. Are
we thinking receiver then to give the Eagles here?
That's what I think would be most likely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so let's give him one. Who do you think it comes down to? I think it probably comes down to Jameson Williams or Chris Olave.
I agree. I think
you're an Olave guy, aren't you?
Yeah, but I think they might like Jameson Williams more.
I'm a Jameson Williams guy. I'll go ahead and I'll pound the table for Jameson Williams.
All right, I'll take Olave in that scenario, since I just want to be different.
Okay. All right. And I'd take Jameson Williams. Well, I got to put a pick in here. I'll put in Williams, but just because he's the higher rated on here.
Yeah.
But we have to put someone in. So we'll draft Jameson Williams, and then we're not going to draft another receiver. So with 16,
keep trying to get it right.
And this would be great. At 16, the Saints take Drake London. 17, the Chargers take Trevor Penning. That would be great for the Eagles, because then, they already took a receiver, not taking another receiver. Tackle's not a position we think they're going to take in the first round. So now at 18, it frees you up. You can go Devontae Wyatt. You can go Trent McDuffie. You can go George Karlaftis or Devin Lloyd or Daxton Hill. I think it would be a defensive player here. You're not going offense. Zion Johnson's out there. Linderbaum's out there, but
no, I think it's going to be. I think I've been saying this since February. It's going to be, well, at first it was a receiver, a defensive, a receiver, an edge, and a corner. Well, you have two of them now. If you take a receiver there, Devin Lloyd, certainly intriguing pick at that second spot, or a corner. And again, it comes down to, what they're thinking about that second group of corners. But if they really like, say McDuffie in that spot, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. We got to pick someone here. So
I'll take McDuffie.
We'll go McDuffie. We'll put him in.
I'm going to sit here and say they're going to take a linebacker. So I'm not convinced they won't, but I think it's certainly.
So in this case, I think the most realistic, it would come down to McDuffie or Devontae Wyatt. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay, but we'll go McDuffie. I like that. Going Jameson Williams, Trent McDuffie. So now we're going to have a bunch of picks come off the board. I'm watching them fly off here. We're going to have some dead time.
Any good names coming up? What do you got?
Yeah, we had Perion Winfrey, who I thought would be a good second-round option. He came off in the first round. Ajabo's gone. He just went Boye Mafe to the Texans. So we got to think it's probably defensive line would make a lot of sense in the second round. They don't come out of the first round with a defensive lineman. Cameron Thomas is gone. So now here we are. We're on the clock at 51. And there are some options. I'll kind of run through them with you. The picks right before. right before the Eagles.
Yeah, go ahead.
45, Tariq Woolen. 46, Sam Howell. 47, Sean Reinen. 48, Cameron Thomas. 49, Jalen Petrie, your guy. 50, Brees Hall, pretty late for the good running back. And now 51, the Eagles are on the clock.
Well, what defensive linemen are? I mean, what's the group that's still available?
Yeah, it looks like the it doesn't really line up great for them at defensive. The top defensive interior defensive lineman is Travis Jones from UConn, who's kind of a big body. He was kind of a run stuffer, but he's really strong and powerful. Had a good showing at the
Huge,
Senior
like
Bowl.
6'4", 345.
Yeah, he's a big dude. Zachary Carter from Florida, Mathis from Alabama, Butler from Tennessee, John Ridgway from Arkansas are the next guys at interior. At the edge, Logan Hall, who you can kind of consider an interior guy, is a big player. Josh Paschal from Kentucky, Kingsley Enagbare from South Carolina, Drake Jackson from USC, I think is a legitimate option. Nick Bonito from Oklahoma. So there are some options, but the top guys on the board right now, Quay Walker, the linebacker from Georgia, and Christian Harris, the linebacker from Alabama.
Yeah. I would think if they go receiver, corner in the first round, that it's going to be some sort of front seven defensive guy, whether it's a backer or an interior lineman or an edge.
Do you want to hear the safeties?
Sure.
I mean, the next best safeties are Kirby Joseph from Illinois and Nick Cross from Maryland.
So the Georgia safety is gone?
Yes. Cine is gone. Petrie's gone. Brisker's gone.
I take it like DeMarvin Leal's gone.
Let's see if Leal's there. Yeah, he's gone.
He's gone. You said Logan Hall, the Houston kid, your guy.
Oh, my guy. He's available.
He's an intriguing guy. I think I might consider him.
Logan Hall.
Yeah.
Is that our pick?
What do you think of him?
He's really big. He's they do like those versatile players, so maybe they can play him inside, outside. He's huge though. I mean, he's kind of a tweener to me. Yeah. He's like 6'6", 280.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not your prototypical 4-3 edge. If anything, he's like a 3-4 defensive end who kind of plays interior. So I don't know if he's a great scheme fit, but they use some odd fronts too. So that's the one thing about Gannon we've kind of figured out is they can use guys.
Yeah. What about backer wise? What's available? Is that Wyoming kid? Is he gone? That
Muma?
Yeah,
he's gone. The top backers are Quay Walker, who, I mean, yeah, take Georgia players, right? And Christian Harris, who from Alabama, who's undersized. He's only like 225 pounds, but flies. He's sideline to sideline. Walker's a little bigger.
He's like 240, right?
Yeah, when you watch Georgia, like Nakobe Dean's smaller, more instinctive. Walker has upside, though. He's like 240, 243, pretty fast, great athlete.
He might be
instinctive.
He might be the guy.
Quay Walker. So we'd be willing to pass up defensive line and go linebacker for him.
Yeah. I'm thinking that way.
Yeah, I'd be okay with it. I feel like the value there is so great that I would do that.
I think you're getting better value at linebacker than you would at D-line there. I'm not crazy about the names you reeled off at D-line.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. So we're going Quay Walker?
Yeah.
All right. And then we're only doing 2 rounds because
let's
we're not going to have you guys humor us. But that's not bad. So we end up with our first 3 picks. We go 15 Jameson Williams, 18 Trent McDuffie, 51 Quay Walker. Sign me up for that.
Yeah, that's a heck of a take right there. If they can get those 3 guys, that would be a pretty good couple days.
That's fun. Start. And yeah, in the next week or so, keep an eye out on my Twitter account. I'll be doing another fan source mock draft, and it's kind of the same process. I'll give you guys 4 options at 15, 4 options at 18, 51 through the whole draft, and we'll kind of pick it that way. Last time I did, I had people complain to me that like they didn't like my 4 options. I was like, I don't know how else to do this. Like I can't make everyone an option. Twitter only has 4 in a poll. So
can you unblock me so I can participate in that?
You know what's funny? You mentioned that. I want to put out a blanket statement. I am not Rube's Twitter liaison. I have a lot. I have so many people who are like, "Can you tell Rube to unblock me?" I'm like, "I'm not doing this. This is not my job." So every once in a while, I'll do it. If it's someone that is a good Twitter person for me, I'll give you a heads up. But
I have a Twitter block amnesty day coming up soon.
What's that mean?
Just anybody who has to be reinstated, I just reinstate them.
Oh, I like that. But how are you going to see it?
They'll never see it. That's the good thing. Nobody ever knows about it.
Jimmy Kempski did it with Brandon, because Brandon Graham used to be a big blocker on Twitter. And there was a day after the Super Bowl where I think Kempski, it was like some kind of weird deal. And BG just sat there and unblocked everyone. Maybe you should do that. Start fresh.
Yeah. No, I do. Once a year, I do a Twitter block amnesty day. And obviously, people have to rely on someone they know who's on Twitter to let them know about it. But
it's not me. Please don't make it me.
Yeah, just tweet it. I'll send you the copy. You can tweet it out.
Oh gosh, sounds awful. All right, next thing on our list here, Peter King, his Football Morning in America column, which is a must read every week, polled 12 front office executives, unnamed, and came up with some interesting theories about this upcoming draft. One of them you wrote about because we found it so interesting. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what that theory was?
Yeah, we kind of I think when we just did that first bit, we kind of alluded to it almost. And it was coaches and GMs. The thinking is that, and we saw one wide receiver in the one you did. Where did Garrett Wilson go in what you just did? Was he 11th?
Yes, 11th to Washington.
Yeah. So the theory is that the quarterbacks in this draft are just not that good. They're just, there's not a sure thing in the group, which I think is fair. Mm-hmm. That edge and really D-line, edge, and O-line are so good up top, but don't have great depth, that there's going to be a real run on those positions. And that the first 10 picks of the draft, and this has never happened. The draft started in 1936. But the theory is that there's a chance the first 10 picks in the draft will all be non-offensive skill players. So no running backs, quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends in the first 10 picks. It's never happened. There's been 4 years where 9 out of the 10 were non-skill players. And the thinking is, there's really good depth at receiver. So you can get a guy. You don't have to, if you want a receiver, you don't have to get him at 7 or 9. If you need a corner, there's good depth there. And the theory is that the 2 corners will go in the top 10 and Hamilton. So you're going to have 10 players, none of them quarterbacks or receivers, essentially, because we know there's not going to be any tight ends or running backs in that group anyway. So what that would do, and look, I think this is unlikely. I think it's an unlikely scenario, but I do think it's likely, and we saw it in that projected mock, that the top 10 picks will be top heavy with linemen and with non-skill guys, with linebacker or with line defensive ends and edge rushers and O linemen. And that'll push the skill guys down to right where the Eagles are sitting and give them that flexibility that we just saw, where we had our pick of, Olave or James, really all but Garrett Wilson as far as wide receiver goes, and all the corners other than 2 of them. And I really think there's something to it. I don't think all 10 will be non-skill guys, because there's always going to be some team's always going to just we have to get a quarterback, and they're going to reach for somebody. And look, I think Pickett has a chance to be a player. I think Willis is. We'll see, but he's got a lot. He's got a big arm. He's got a lot going for him. But there's not a slam dunk in the group, and there is a chance that it's going to lead to this whole thing where the top of the draft is just all linemen and push everyone else down. So that plays into the Eagles' hands because they'll have that flexibility to get out of 15 and still get, like we said, still get good value at the positions where they need players. So I think they can, like, if they don't take an offensive lineman or even an edge in the first couple rounds, it's not a disaster for them. I mean, doesn't mean they won't do it, but they have bodies there. They have one of the best O-lines already, and they have bodies on the D-line. They added an edge, free agency. So I thought it was really intriguing. And it's an interesting way to look at it. It would be very different. And, we're just so used to so much of the speculation has been around receivers and quarterbacks. And the notion of having a top 10 without either of them is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's probably unlikely that happens. I think Malik Willis will end up in the top 10. Someone will pick him. And we'll see if maybe Garrett Wilson sneaks in the top 10. So, but even if there's 8 of 10 are non-skill guys, you're right. It does push some players down the board a little bit, but it could also be bad news for the Eagles if you look at it in terms of, like, if they want an edge player, which is a position they value, a position I still think is in need,
right?
They should be hoping in a way that at least the quarterbacks come off the board, right?
Yeah. But I don't think Howie's going to reach for an edge. I mean, I don't think edge is such a need that he would reach for one. I mean, I don't know. I think there's other areas that they have more pressing needs that are positions of value as well. So I think it might play in their hands as far as having some flexibility. But yeah, I mean, I doubt you're going to find an edge after that first group who's going to come in on day one and make an impact. So
yeah, you're probably right, especially if those guys go, which is also why I think we talk about the trade up scenario. If a Jermaine Johnson ends up sliding a little bit, be worth it, I think. Modest trade up.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think, like I said, I think everything's in play. When Howie's your GM, trade up, trade down, both at the same time, everything's possible. And when you have 2 picks that close together, you just have a lot of different ways you can go.
Yeah. All right. Well, how about the trade down scenario then? Because we brought up some trade up. We've talked a lot about trading up options. The trade down candidates are a little trickier because you're not just trading down to, like, target a guy. You're trading down because you feel like the value, you're not going to lose that much value, and you pick up additional picks. But I figure we toss around some names that if the Eagles want to trade down from that 15, 18 range into, the 20s or even early second round, who are some names there that would make sense? I figure we can just toss this back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends what happens with their other pick, assuming they trade out of. I mean, if it's 15, there isn't another pick yet. But I think a guy like Karlaftis, we don't know what they think of him, but I wouldn't take him at 15 or 18, but I would take him at 25. I would take him in the 20s. I think a guy like Dotson, you get out of where you are if you don't get the receiver you want. I think Dotson's not that far off that first group, really.
You can throw Christian Watson in there or Treylon Burks. I think the receivers, there's a few of them that you can make that case.
I really want him to take Christian Watson. We'd be allowed to say his name, right? I mean, we just did. He's an interesting one. I mean, he's, I thought they could get him at 51 about a week ago. Now I'm not so sure. Yeah. So he's a good name, North Dakota State. But yeah, I think Karlaftis makes sense. We don't know how some of these corners are going to go. I don't know where Devin Lloyd's going to go. I mean, if he's,
he's on my list of a possible. I mean, and he's someone who, if he would have gone to the combine and crushed it, he might be a trade up candidate.
Yeah.
But now, it's you got to figure out is how much do you care about that, because he didn't run well at the combine, and it matters.
Yep,
it does. It matters to teams. So, but taking him at 25, and that's the other thing with a linebacker too. It's we all know how unlikely it is that they take a linebacker. We all accept that, but you start like conceding that, well, they have 2 picks, and but they're gaining value, and he can rush the passer a little bit, and if you start kind of conceding all that, all of a sudden, like, I can talk myself into trading back and taking Devin Lloyd in the mid-20s.
Yeah, and I think the farther down you get in the first round, the more likely they are to take a linebacker. Mm-hmm. More likely to take one at 25 than at 15. Plus, when they announce the pick, they could just call him a safety, just so they don't have to.
Well, they wouldn't do that.
They're
break an even longer streak.
Yeah, that's true. They could call him, Utah tight end Devin Lloyd. But I look, I don't think there's any hard and fast rule on Howie's desk that says you can't take a linebacker in the first round. I think if a guy like him is available deep into the first round and you can get some value and get that player, I don't see why Howie wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I'll tell you another guy on the list here for me, Ojabo. If you don't feel comfortable taking a guy with an Achilles at 18, get some value back, get an extra pick or two, and then draft him, whether it's late in the first round or early in the second. And another part of this with Ojabo is with an injured player who might just have a completely lost rookie season, is there some added value in taking him in the first round, knowing you'll have, like, if he ends up being a star, you'd have that extra year of team control. So, like, if you take him in the second round, you're down to 3 years on his rookie contract, which might be fine. But if you take him in, 28 or whatever, you have that 5th-year option possibility to have his rights for another year.
That's an interesting way to look at it, and I'm sure Howie has looked at it that way. It's really interesting. I'm really fascinated by the whole dynamic of, like, drafting a guy with an injury history, not an injury history like Landon Dickerson, but like a guy coming off a single serious injury, like Sidney. And like, what are the lessons there? When does it make sense? How do you know when it's safe to do it? How do you assess the risk reward? Because you're going to get a guy later. I mean, Sidney Jones would have been a first-round pick. He didn't blow out his Achilles his pro day, but did make him a good second-round pick.
Yeah. But the thing is, and there's also, like, to me with Sidney, there's also a causation problem, because we don't know that the Achilles injury is the only reason he hasn't become a good pro.
That's true.
Right? Because, I mean, at times when he was here, his mental toughness was brought into question. And I don't know if that's fair or not, but that doesn't mean it was because of the Achilles. Everyone thinks he was going to be a good pro, but there are busts in the first round all the time. Who's to say he wouldn't have been a first-round bust?
That's true. But I just think that his inability he just couldn't run. I just think that was the biggest thing with him. But I mean, that's fair. That's all valid, and we'll never know. Can't really ask him. Do you think he would have been a bust if you never blew out your Achilles and got picked, 19th overall? But Ojabo's a fascinating guy because you can really get a bargain there. I mean, Landon Dickerson is a steal where they got him, and I'm sure they wouldn't have been able to get him there if he hadn't had all those injuries.
No way.
So, Sidney didn't work out for whatever reason. Landon, I think, is going to be a Pro Bowler like really soon.
The funny thing is, if you were to erase their names and not know anything about them, and you were to ask me which one was a bigger risk, I'd tell you Landon Dickerson.
Because it's such a litany of injuries.
It's a history of it, whereas Sidney had one injury. Now, it's a significant injury for that position. It's obviously the same injury as Ojabo, but a different position, different way to play the game. But if you were to just say player A, player B, Player A had one injury. It came in his pro day. Otherwise, pretty clean. Player 2, everything. just everything throughout college.
I think a lot of it has to do with the position. I mean, for a guard, that kind of injury. I mean, especially a knee. I mean, you want a guy who's athletic and quick and moves on his feet, but he doesn't have to be a sprinter. Where a corner pretty much do. I think that's
but the point isn't just the ACL though. It's everything he had in college.
Yeah, no, but I just think the positions play such a big role in that whole evaluation of the risk. But I find all that really interesting, and it's certainly like in 5 years, nobody's going to be remembering Ojabo's injury. I mean, I don't think. You never know. But so, do you really want to bypass the chance to get a potentially elite player because of one injury that?
And the added layer with him, though, is that he was already very raw. Really 1 year of production at Michigan, started playing football late. So you're already thinking about, all right, he's a really raw prospect. He's going to have to learn a lot. You have to come a long way. Now he's behind the 8 ball a little bit because of the injury. How does it all factor in? There's so many different ways to look at it.
Just look at it as a redshirt year that he might have needed anyway. Just get him in the facility, get him in the books, get him healthy, get him around the team, get him around the culture. It's an intriguing name, and I'm kind of down with it.
Yeah. Now, I will say that I think you're allowed to take shots. You can't take too many in 1 year. So if you draft Jameson Williams, I wouldn't then.
I'm not worried about him. He'll be fine.
I just think you have to try to minimize risk.
I mean, you don't want to take 10 injured guys, but
like let's go, take Jameson Williams, Andrew Booth, and Ojabo.
Yeah,
it was funny in my last mock draft. I really wanted to give them Jameson Williams and Andrew Booth at 15 and 18, and I thought, man, people are going to kill me if I do this.
Yeah, interesting. I'm really intrigued by where Ojabo is going to go and what people are going to think of him and how much this is going to affect him. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. You want to move on to Howie's past?
Yeah, you're in charge here. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to say it, but we left off. We did 2015 last week, which was not his draft. He does not get the credit or blame for that one. But now it's 2016. He's back in power. The Eagles started that process with the number 13 overall pick and Sam Bradford as their starter. and things changed mighty quickly from 13 to 8, right? 8?
Yeah.
And then from 8 to 2 to draft their quarterback, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, chocolate, vanilla, pepperoni or sausage. And ultimately, Wentz was always their guy. And they drafted him. And it's a really hard one to look back and evaluate now because I still think it was a very successful draft pick.
Absolutely. No question about it. And I still don't know how Howie was so sure that it was that the Rams were going to take Goff, but they knew. He knew somehow.
Because they told him.
But I mean, how do you?
Why wouldn't the Rams tell him?
Yeah, I guess, but
they're going to get their guy anyway.
Yeah, I know, but it just seems I wouldn't trust them. But anyway, I think it was a great pick, and who knew it was going to play out the way it did, and he helped them win a Super Bowl. He was on track for an MVP. Everything that happened after the injury, I'll never really understand all of it. I'll never understand why he acted the way he did. He actually played some good football in those next couple of years before he got hurt. But for it to go from where it was to where it did, it's that age-old question: what makes it a good pick or a bad pick? At what point do the other factors just kind of take over? And I think it was a hell of a. I mean, because everything that went into getting that pick. I mean, being able to trade Byron Maxwell and getting something for these guys. Trading DeMarco Murray. I mean, it was over a period of like 2 weeks, Howie made like 5 incredible moves that led to them getting an
It
MVP.
just undo everything Chip did.
That's what he did. And he had like a year to figure out how he was going to do it. I still can't believe he was able to trade Kiko, Kiko and Byron Maxwell were a package deal, right? Imagine that.
Yeah.
Man. So, I mean, that really set the tone for what happened in 17. I mean, that series of moves, I think I did a story on it last year, just like 10 days that like saved a franchise or something, something like that. And really did. So, it's kind of like that Jordan Matthews thing. Is that a bad pick because he only had 3 good years? No, I think it's a good pick, and just external factors affected his career, injuries and other stuff. But to me, it's an A+ pick.
I'd probably take off the plus, just for the way it ended. But yeah, I still think it's a good pick. He was their starter for 4 years. 3 of them were pretty good. One of them was excellent. Yeah, it's a weird deal, but ultimately, and the process they went through, I don't know if I ever mentioned this. In the back of my head, I always wanted to write a book about it, and I thought I was going to get an opportunity to, because I thought he was going to be the franchise quarterback here for 10, 15 years. They'd win Super Bowls, he'd win an MVP or 2, and because the process they went through to scout him. And I was there at the Senior Bowl that year where they really started that process. And that was where they realized, all right, we got to get out of 13 if we want this guy. And then to the combine, how extensive their meetings were with him. Like, I thought that would make a hell of a book. I'll never get the right. Maybe there's a different book now. But I was fascinated by what they
found a publisher
through.
in Philadelphia. That's right. Oh, I found a publisher in Indianapolis. That's really. Oh, I found a publisher in Washington. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah.
All right. So they didn't have a second round pick that year because of the trade up. But the third round, number 79 overall. So relatively deep in the third round. Isaac Seumalo from Oregon State. They drafted him to be Jason Kelsey's eventual replacement. Here we are 6-7 years later, and that hasn't happened. What do you think of the Isaac pick? Because they tried to make him a starter pretty early in his career, and it didn't take. I mean, they tried to make him a starter in 17. They had to bench him.
Bench him for Wiz. But he's
bench him for Chance.
For Chance Warmack initially. Yeah.
And then Wiz.
You're right. I think he's really turned into a solid guard. The injuries have been a real issue with him in the last few years. But I think, for a third round pick, I mean, you get a starting guard. There was a point where I remember we did our, who's going to be the Eagles' first time Pro Bowler this coming season, and he was your guy. And it's a valid pick. I mean, he was kind of bubbling under that level. He, at his best, I mean, he's an above average guard. He just can't stay healthy. And right now, I mean, I don't know exactly where he fits in. He's obviously he'll be back this year. Presumably healthy, but he's not going back to left guard. You ain't moving Landon Dickerson.
I wouldn't. I don't know if that's the way they view it.
I can't imagine, but you never know. But, and then you have Driscoll, you have Herbig, and you have Seumalo. I kind of think, and certainly Driscoll's had his own injury issues, as many as Seumalo, but and Seumalo hasn't played right guard. I'm sure he could. I would think. But there's, I don't think I wouldn't say he's guaranteed a starting spot this year.
Yeah, and even if, you pencil him in there, can you rely on him at this point? He's been hurt an awful lot, and he's coming off a Lisfranc. That Lisfranc is, you talk about like injuries that with the Sidney Jones thing, like that injury really affected him because of his position. You can argue a foot injury for an offensive guard could be awful.
Yeah, it's a really serious injury. I remember I'd never heard of it until Deuce had one. I think it was in 2000. And he would just sit at his locker lifting marbles up under his toes. He would just sit there for like all day. That's all he could do. It's a really serious injury. But, what did he play, 8 games last year maybe?
Less. He was out pretty quick.
Yeah, you're right. So we'll see. but I think it was for a 3. It was a good pick. It was a solid pick.
Yeah. And so because of the Carson Wentz trade, he only played 3 games last year.
3 games. Okay. Yeah.
But because of the trade up, they only had 2 picks in the first 4 rounds, and it was their number 2 overall and number 79 overall. So their next pick was in the 5th round, and it was Wendell Smallwood at pick 153 out of West Virginia, and it was an area where there were some really good running backs in that area. Wendell was a fine pick.
Yeah,
in the 5th round.
Yeah, I know one guy who thinks is a brilliant pick, but that's another story. I think he's still in the league. He was at the end of last year, so he's had a good career for a 5th round pick. He was like the 4th running back on the Super Bowl team once they got Ajayi, behind LeGarrette and Ajayi and Corey Clement. But there was a point where Doug started like using him too much. He just was never that good where he should have been getting 12, 13 carries a game. There was a point where Doug started using him too much, but he had an okay career for a 5th round pick, but the next 5th round pick had a better career.
He did. That was Halapoulivaati Vaitai, 5th rounder, number 164 out of TCU. Big V. And I'll never forget, first I heard his name and saw his name, I thought there is a 0% chance this guy is not going to end up in Philadelphia because I'm going to have to learn this name.
I remember doing quick slants, and we did our Eagles spelling bee, and I knew I was going to get him, and I was up, and I think it was probably his rookie year because I just didn't know how to spell it yet. I stayed up like till 3 a.m. because I think Sean Kane was producing. I knew I was going to get that, and Gunnar got Gunnar would get like Derek Barnett, and I would get he wasn't drafted yet, but. Anyway, I nailed it, and it was one of my prouder moments on quick slants. But I mean, the job he did in 2017 after JP got hurt was incredible. I mean, he made himself a ton of money and won a Super Bowl playing left tackle. As a second year, I guess, 5th round pick. It was really impressive. It was really solid.
And then he became a versatile backup because he played guard.
Yeah, he play all 4.
A valuable type of player to have. And they've tried to duplicate that. I mean, I think that was kind of the mold that they drafted Drake Driscoll in, was that, hey, maybe he can be our next Big V type of player.
I think Big V's now playing guard for the Lions, I believe.
Yeah. I saw him, actually. Did I tell you this? I ran into Big V in Tampa before the playoff game.
Really?
He was just down there for the game with some friends. I saw him out and had a longest chat I've ever had with Big V.
He never said very much.
He was a quiet guy, but he always very nice, and it was really cool to talk to him. And,
it was funny because leading up to the throughout the run down the stretch in 2017, he was a big story. He was playing well. JP was hurt. I mean, he was basically replacing a Hall of Famer, but we never talked to him. He was never in his locker. He was never in the locker.
Tell me that. I spent my week in LA trying to talk to him.
So we're at
White Whale.
We're at Media Day. Yeah. We're at Media Day and at the hockey arena in St. Paul, Minnesota, Super Bowl week, that Tuesday, when we walked to dinner and it was like minus 35 degrees. And the players were required to be in there. They had to talk. So we literally hadn't talked to him in a month. So I remember it was like me and maybe 3 other writers see him like way in the corner. He's like trying to hide and way in the corner. We go up to him and do you have a minute? He's like, yeah. And Les Bowen says, well, Big V, we haven't really seen you around very much. And and Big V goes, I had meetings. You had meetings for the last 2 months nonstop. But he didn't really give us much, but at least we talked to him. But yeah, it was really an underrated aspect of that Super Bowl run was the job he did at left tackle.
Yeah. And honestly, one of the underrated parts of the job he did was just how much Jason Peters was pulling the strings.
Yeah.
I mean, we all knew that JP was helping him. I don't know if people really understand just how much Jason Peters was in his ear, basically between every series and working with him during the week. I mean, JP was around a ton and really helped him be solid out there.
Yeah, and Stout certainly doesn't hurt to have the best O-line coach in the business. When you have a 23-year-old fifth-round pick playing in a Super Bowl, the guy you want is Stout.
Yeah. All right. So after Big V in the 5th round, Blake Countess in the 6th, one of Howie's favorite players. It was really weird. He didn't make the team, and he ends up not staying here. He goes to LA and ends up being a contributor with the Rams for a few years. And then what's he on? They've been 3 stints back here since then.
Yeah, he was here part of the year last year, and then the Eagles cut him. He goes back to the Rams and wins a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah.
So
decent special teams player, but never here. He's never played here.
He's never played a snap for the Eagles. He's been here like 4 times.
Kind of strange. My one memory of Blake Countess was in 2016, the Eagles were starting to toy with helmet cams. They thought it would help them basically see the vision of a player. And they never really ended up using them because they were like, it was too Blair Witchy. People were getting sick trying to watch it, but they picked him for some reason as the guinea pig.
Well, at least he's contributed in some way to the organization.
Next pick, 7th round, excellent pick. Number 233 overall, Jalen Mills.
Jalen Mills, starting corner on a Super Bowl team, 7th round pick. They never get to Minneapolis without the play he made at the end of the NFC Championship game on Julio Jones. So,
divisional round.
What's that?
Divisional round.
Yeah, I'm sorry, conference semi. Yeah. The Vikings game was a blowout, but I never understood why people were down on people didn't like Jalen Mills. I mean, such an overachiever, always played hard, got the most out of his ability. He couldn't run, but you get him in the red zone. He was really good. He was a really good red zone cornerback. Tough matchup against fast receivers. We know that, but gave everything he had. If you can get you think about the Super Bowl. I mean, they had 2 guys drafted after pick 163 that started on a Super Bowl team. I mean, that's pretty good.
Their second seasons.
Their second seasons, right? I always like Jalen. I like the way he plays. I like his approach. I like his mentality, his swagger, his confidence. He acts like a first-round pick, and I like that.
Yeah. Green Goblin. It was a good pick, and I get why people tired of him a little bit, but when you look at where he was drafted and what he contributed, it's hard to argue against it.
Yep.
And there were 2 more 7th-round picks. Alex McAllister at 240, the long defensive end from Florida, never played here, never played anywhere. He was a little disappointing. They saw something in him, and it just never worked out. I actually had him as Howie's worst 7th-round pick because they thought they had something in him, and it didn't work.
The only guy in this draft that never played.
Yeah. And then the last one was one of my favorite guys, Joe Walker, who played. I mean, he ended up getting hurt in the Super Bowl season, but he was a starter on that Super Bowl team for a while after Jordan Hicks got hurt.
Yeah. And then they became teammates in Arizona playing under Bill Davis, oddly enough. Yeah. Joe's still in the league. He's still
special teamer.
He's still grinding. So I give him anybody drafted in the 7th round who can get 6-7 years, get a pension. You give him a lot of credit.
And you know how he must have liked him because he drafted, or maybe this was just a little wink at Chip to use his last pick in his first draft back on an Oregon player.
Yeah, I think he was going to take an Oregon player no matter what it took.
Yeah, Joe Walker, hey, still in the league, not bad. And overall, pretty good draft class, especially when you look at they only had 2 picks in the top 80.
Like 2 picks in the top 150.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got to get that kind of talent without a 2 and without a 4 is impressive. Good work.
All right. We still have, we have to, 2017. Derek Barnett at 14. I feel like we've spent so much time on Barnett, and everyone knows where we stand on him. Disappointing 1st-round pick. I don't call him a bust. I think you do, but there it is.
Yeah, and that's a good intro into, I have a piece up on our site right now. I ranked all the busts in Eagles history, or since 1980. There's a lot of them. There's more than I expected when I started the piece, but I ranked them all from the biggest bust of all time to the least bustiest, but still maybe a bust. Probably a bad way to put it.
Yeah, I don't think that's the greatest.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So DB's in there. I don't think he's extremely disappointing. Not really a bust, but I included him just because I wanted to.
Yeah, that's fair. Next one, Sidney Jones at 43. We already talked about it on this podcast. We both liked the pick at the time.
Yep.
And I still don't hate it when I look back at it, trying to be objective. Obviously, it didn't work out. But I don't hate the process and the thought process.
Yeah. And, he was like, I think he had just turned 21 when they drafted him. So,
Very young. Him and Barnett were very young.
Right. Yeah, Barnett's still, so, yeah, there's really, I like the idea. I thought it was worth it. I still do. He was a first-round talent that you redshirt him. I think he got on the field right at the end of the season. I think the last regular season game he played some snaps, didn't play in the playoffs. Yeah. But yeah, it just didn't work out. And he is still in the league. He's bounced around, but it's just it was worth a shot, and it didn't pan out.
Yeah. Third round, number 99 overall, so a late third round pick, Rasul Douglas out of West Virginia.
Yeah, who it took him a while, but when he put it all together last year with his fifth team of the year, went to Green Bay and just had an incredible year. Only played like 11 games and had, what do you have, 6 interceptions and 2 pick sixes.
Yeah.
He just got in the right situation, got to a place where his style fit what they were doing. He was on a good team. He was surrounded by they get great pressure. And he just made plays. He jumped a bunch of routes. He's always done that, but the ball came to him this time. And he got a big contract. We'll see if it was a 1-year thing or, if he's really kind of figured it all out. And he was their best corner. He was in that whole. They didn't have good corners then, but Darby had a good run. Darby and Jalen were. In that Super Bowl year, they did what they could. But, as far as young corners, that's why
Rasul had to play quite a bit that year because Darby had that ankle injury early.
Right. But, with Rasul, like the whole time he was here, like he always felt like there was something there. And he could never play consistently. Like he would, you would start to think like he knocked down a ball, he'd make a diving play, and then he would just get crushed on a double move and receivers like 50 yards over. It was just frustrating to watch him. He had good size. He was a really physical player. Good.
He didn't really suit their scheme. It's funny. He'd suit the scheme they have now.
Yeah, he would. I liked how physical he was. He was always a good tackler. Liked to come up and support the run. But they took 2 corners back to back, and neither one panned out. That was disappointing.
Definitely. We're going from one of your favorite players to another one of your favorite players. Mac Hollins, 4th round, 118 overall.
Yeah. Caught some balls for the Dolphins last year, a couple touchdowns, a good special teamer. I thought he was going to be pretty good. He wasn't.
I did too. The injuries here probably played a pretty significant role in that.
Yeah, but he wasn't good when he was healthy.
Yeah, he wasn't. But he was at least better than the next pick in the 4th round, 132 overall. I always feel bad really railing against this pick because Donnell Pumphrey is a really nice kid.
Yeah.
But it was just the worst pick ever. And it's tough to like it's an awful pick in a year where they really touted how good the running back class was to draft a kid who was 5'9", 120 pounds.
But it was a little bigger than that. But the issue to me, he just had and he was the all-time leading rusher in college football history, which, where do you go? San Diego State, I think.
Yeah.
He broke Ron Dayne's career rushing record, which is crazy. But he seemed to have no instincts. They must have had one hell of an offensive line at San Diego State because I remember one preseason game. Pumphrey, you remember this? He takes off up the middle. There's nobody, there's no defenders there. He starts racing down the field. And the only guy left on the field is a safety from the other team. And he just runs right into him.
Right in him.
There was no cuts. He just ran right into him. And he got it was like a 35-yard game, but it was, like you said, like, what is he doing? He just ran into the guy.
I remember that play.
Yeah, and that's like his career. He never got on the field, never got a snap in a regular season game. And yeah, it was just a terrible pick. It was almost like how do you watch him play? And like sometimes you get these ultra productive, guys in college that just don't project. Like who's the quarterback with the Zanny? What's his name this year?
Zappy?
Yeah, Zappy. Yeah. Like, I mean, he's throwing like 600 yards a game, but he's not going to be a pro quarterback. You just can look at the guy and the way he throws, and Donnell Pumphrey should have been that. And it was a 4th-round pick, so you don't get too excited about it. But
there were so many guys that went after him that had success.
Yeah.
And it was, that was, and this is why Howie will never talk up positions in the draft anymore. So you'll ask him a question about, this is a pretty deep class for this, and he'll go, I don't want to. Right. Because he got burnt so bad that year because he talked about, you can find a really good running back. This is the deepest running back class ever. And then up with a guy who never played. The problem with Pumphrey was he was so prolific in college, but he was a between the tackles runner, and the Eagles knew he couldn't be that in the NFL, and they projected him as like this, outside receiver, bounce outside type of runner, and he just wasn't that. So
couldn't do it.
Yeah, couldn't do it, and it disaster. Next,
this is a really bad draft. What else you got?
Shelton Gibson at 166 overall. Had one catch.
Like 56-yarder from
big catch.
Yeah, that was it. I think he's still waiting for a second one.
The only other memory I have of Shelton, and he came back for another stint at some point. My only memory of Shelton Gibson was it was during 2017, I think, when Camus Grugier-Hill made some comment like about the Cowboys, and we were all waiting to talk to him. And Shelton walked in with the hood and a Camus jersey on, and got everyone to follow him. That's my only other memory of Shelton Gibson.
I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. That's funny.
Another 5th rounder, Nate Gary at 184 overall. As much as people hate Nate Gary, as a 5th round pick, he was fine. It was just that they played him too much and they gave him too big a role. But if he was just a 5th round pick who was a backup linebacker and a special teamer, he's fine.
He's actually a pretty good cover linebacker. I think he had 2 pick sixes, I think, while he was here, I believe. But yeah, he just couldn't tackle. He couldn't make a tackle.
It's funny. People love Sean Bradley and they hate Nate Gary. And it's just because they're both, one was a 5th, one was a 6th. They're both late round special teams linebackers, but one was asked to do too much.
That's true. Both ran the 400 in high school and were on like state champion mile relay teams.
In the 6th round, they drafted.
That wasn't that hard. It wasn't like you get this look on your face like, oh, he's talking about track. What am I going to do?
Number 214, Elijah Qualls played a little bit here.
3 Pro Bowls and made first team All Pro once.
Didn't do much. I have a weird memory about him too. He got hurt in training camp, and this is when I knew it wasn't going to work out for him. Chris Wilson, who now coaches defensive line at Colorado, was the D-line coach in 2017, and Elijah Qualls got hurt in training camp. And while he was on the ground hurt, I've never seen this before. I'll probably never see it again. Chris Wilson just overtop berating him, saying like, you suck already and now you're hurt. It was, that was the moment I was like, this isn't going to work out.
Oh, it didn't work out for either one of them.
Yeah. Well, Chris Wilson, I guess Elijah Qualls got a ring too, huh?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. There you go.
That's it. Not a great draft class.
A terrible draft class.
Yeah.
I mean, when Derek Barnett's the best player you get in a draft, it's really not a good draft.
Yeah, pretty brutal. So 2016, pretty good. 2017, not so good.
Pretty bad.
Yeah. Got anything else before we wrap it up?
No. One
Going
day
long
closer.
here.
One day closer.
One day closer. You're all sixered up. I know it's been fun. It's been a fun run so far.
It hasn't really been a run yet. It's just 2 games over Toronto. But yeah, they look great.
Yeah, they do. All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. Leave a 5-star review. That actually does help us. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button. And we don't get paid for it, but in a roundabout way, maybe we kind of do. If you're watching on YouTube, click the like button and subscribe there as well. We'll talk to you later in the week. For Reuben, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle.